Welcome once again. This is Open Source India. This is the second day. And how's your day going so far? I guess pretty excited with the kind of knowledge transfer that's taking place. Joining us now, a software technology leader with decades of experience in all aspects of software development. He has been managing and working closely with open source and database technologies. He has been a speaker at multiple Indian and international events, and he currently leads the MySQL development team in India, which he has hired and nurtured from scratch. At 100 plus, the India MySQL development team is largest across any country. He is none other than Sanjay Manwani, Senior Director, MySQL India. The topic that he's going to be sharing knowledge on is why MySQL remains the open source database of choice. I request the audience to post your questions in the Q&A box located on the right-hand side of your windows and request Mr. Manwani to take over.
Thank you so much, and I think it's a pleasure to be speaking at OSI again. So, without any ado, let's start. I have my 45 minutes. So, why does MySQL remain the open source database of choice? That is the topic. Okay. Okay, this is just the safe harbor that whatever I say, something that we are talking about forward-looking things, and if you make any business decisions, that's your choice, and it's not Oracle's. Something that you can catch hold of Oracle for. Okay, so this is the first slide. I always say MySQL is very, very successful, and the grammar thing always says, why do you say very, very? And very, very is because that is a fact. We are the number one database, and it's not something that just something that I say or I talk about. This is the DB Engines ranking, and if you see right on top is Oracle, and number two is MySQL. So we are the open source one, and we are quite far ahead of any other open source database that you can think about. Yes, they are growing, but if you look at these independent rankings, we are right up there. And it's not only for users, even developers want to use our database, whether it is Stack Overflow, JetBrains. Everybody talks about MySQL as the first database that they want to use, and the one that they want to use, right? So we remain on top, and it's there are a lot of commercial players, whether we look at social, commerce, tech, finance, motor vehicles, everywhere, we are being used quite well. So that is to say we are, doing quite well. And why are we so successful, right? That is something that, something that people have wondered about MySQL. And I think the mantras are very, very simple. Okay. So the thing is, give the customers what they want, because customers' requirements are very clear. They know exactly what they want, and never don't let them down. So our laser focus is on our customers. We make sure we give them what they want, and in order to give the customers what they want, we have to keep up with what is current, and these are trends that we need to know about, and whatever trends are there, they need to be implemented. But that doesn't mean that things should get complicated for the customers. The customers should still continue to feel that it's easy to use, it's simple. And how do you not let them down? One is that you basically keep it secure, and finally you back them whenever there's a problem. There has to be resources to be able to help them. There has to be somebody who goes there, and I will go over each of these quite in detail on what is it that we have been doing. So it began with MySQL 4 many years ago, and at that time what people wanted was something lightweight, easy to install and easy to use. And at that time database was it was the high tech thing. So a lot of databases were there which were very difficult to use, and there were mistakes that the users would make, and the database would kind of uh, be very strict about, okay, you have to use it this way, you have to use it that way. And on the other hand, MySQL was, we used to interpret, okay, this is what the customer has done. It's not exactly right, but this is probably what they want, and we would just take the action based on that. So that was, MySQL 4. 5 was when we got our stored procedures and triggers in. 5.1, we had a lot of stabilization in the application. 5.5 was the first time that, Oracle took over, and the, DB engine, which was being developed by Oracle outside of MySQL, that came back. So all the team became one. 5.6 was about, because we were a part of Oracle, it was all about security. So you needed to make sure that the customers know exactly what they're doing, and if they, they should not face anything out of the box. So that's where a lot of focus on quality, observability, and security came in. 5.7 was again kind of consolidation. It was about ease of use, that people, it should start up in 2 minutes. People should be able to run their query in 3 to 4 minutes. And developers, we realized, are core, right? So you have to give them ease of use. You have to, there are certain paradigms that I'm going to talk about that are a part of 5.7. And finally, this is our latest one. I think we are running on 8.27 now, because I think now we've decided it's going to be a very, very fast cycle of every release is going to be done quickly. 3 months is what we're looking at. So there, the focus is cloud, analytics, and auto tuning. And I will talk about all of this, because, if you look at what customers want today, everything that we talk about, keeping it easy, in fact, it's a handoff. We can take over everything and we can do everything for you. Right. So that's something that cloud allows you to do, and analytics and auto tuning is something I'm going to talk about also. Okay. I think to a certain extent we have some of these slides, because a lot of our competition, they say, oh, MySQL is not a serious database. So we have this just to make sure that we tell them, look, we are a serious database, and we are keeping up with the MySQL standard. So we are in fact very, very standards based. Okay, and if you compare with whatever is out there, I don't want to talk specifically. We are basically, if you look at SQL 92, we are really, really compatible, right? You guys can have a look, but we are out there. We are no longer a toy database. And that's another thing that, there's our competition. They talk about, what about geography support? This has been there for many, many years, but we keep on reiterating, because I think people have, old, relational database developers have this thing that, okay, what about geography? And yeah, geography is there. Don't worry about it. And it's inbuilt. You can do everything that's required to be done. Also, there was some time where people were saying, okay, what about NoSQL? What about if I don't want to use schemas? I want to have CRUD patterns. I want to have things like that. I want to look at not in terms of rows and columns. I want to look in terms of pages and JSON documents. So we created this whole implementation where we said, okay, we will build the NoSQL portion inside of our database. We're very successful. I think where there is nothing that we don't do. I will talk about the JSON functions that we support, and it's really, really extensive. And one of the things that everybody told us, we don't want to have multiple places where we control things, we add users. I want to have a security thing. Let us suppose I want to create a cluster. I want to add nodes. I want to take down a node. I want to change certain controls on a node. I don't want to go into multiple places. So we said, okay, let's create a single shell. As far as MySQL is concerned, you can control all of MySQL using this shell. This shell can talk to you in multiple languages. It can talk to you in JavaScript. It can talk to you in Python. It can talk to you, in your standard SQL, the way it was. And you can create sessions with it. You can, in fact, write a small script. You can do your rapid prototyping. You can write queries in it. And basically, you're writing, if you want to write a Java query in Java, you write a query in Java, and then that just works. So that is something that we can do. Get some more light. As I said, full SQL and dev API. So they created a new dev API for it. It's supported there. And DB cluster, so if there are multiple nodes, you can just add them. And there is full DevOps support if you want to install something, uninstall something, stop something, slow down something. The whole thing just simply works. Okay. Um, just I want to talk about tooling to a certain extent, because this is one of the key things that actually separated us as an open source database from a lot of other databases, because we were giving statistics about everything that is happening inside the database. So when you are running a query, what is CPU utilization? If you have, like, if your database is running, how many active connections are there? How is the storage used? What is the memory use? Read write operations, how much time are they taking? Okay, network, how many bytes are going over the networks? Whether if you have a master and if you have a replica, then what is the data that's going between the master and the replica? So that those kind of things, right? How are the queries running? How many utexes are there? Where is the data getting blocked? If the f-sync is being done, how well is it going? So these kind of things are inbuilt into the MySQL database, and this data is kept inside what is called the performance schema, and it's kind of automatically running. It keeps the data for a x amount of time. You can set it by size, that okay, I'm not going to use more than, say, whatever, 50 GB for it or something like that. You can set up the size, or you can say, I want to have a time that, okay, I want to keep information for the last 10 days because of some reason. So anything that happens in the last 10 days, I want to track, right? And then you can back it up and things like that. And these are very, very visual things, right? So these are very visual tools. You can actually select a piece of area, the photograph that, the picture that you're seeing, where it says database activity, and there is a area there where there is a peak and it is blued out. So that's exactly where you can say, okay, in this area, exactly what has happened, tell me, and he's going to give you details. Okay, these many people connected, these are the queries. You can just drill into a query. So that kind of information is something that is available on MySQL, right? And so these are tools that are available to you. I was talking about JSON. We really give an extensive array of JSON, fields that, or stuff, functions that you can use. It's detail everything that is possible in JSON. And again, remember, this is all built in, so we are not doing anything from outside. It's not a patch on, screwed on something that there's anything loose there, because this has been built in to everything. This has been built into the optimizer. This has been built into the runtime. This has been built into the replication. So everybody knows and understands that there are JSON objects that are going to be queried and that are going to be transferred. And so we need to make sure that everything in JSON is taken care of. Okay. Again, as I said, when we became part of Oracle, there was a huge focus on security, right? And because there were so many hacks that are happening, and there are so many compliances that you need to take care of. There is Sarbanes-Oxley, there is European Commission, there is data protection acts that are coming in, there is HIPAA, there is PCI. So we need to make sure that the certifications are available. We can, basically tell you that yes, MySQL is compatible and it is certified as compatible. So all these, things are taken care of in MySQL, and we can easily, certify that these are there. Obviously, we understand that there is, database is a prime target for hackers, whether it is, because there are so many people who are accessing the database, their application, there is the database, there's operating system, then backup is happening, network. So there are a lot of these, places where it can be attacked. And with every new thing that is coming in, whether it is high availability, there is consolidation, when you're outsourcing, all these vectors are there. So we need to take care of security really, really seriously. And our paradigm is you have to be secure by default. So the moment you install MySQL, it should be secure, right? And if you want to loosen or make the security lax, that is something you do by choice. So by default, if we have an option of choosing secure or not secure, we'll say, okay, secure by default. And this goes across. I think we are going to be talking about our implementation, which happens on the cloud. So as far as MySQL itself is concerned, it's secure. When it talks to database, that whole channel is secure. When there are multiple nodes inside, say, this HeatWave is what is our analytics engine. uh, that is also secure. And even when we are storing onto our cloud, the information, the way it is going onto the cloud on the storage layer, the way that it's exchanged is also secure. So everything is by default secure. All channels are secured, and these are like high standards of security that we are maintaining. Um, and if you look at the security architecture, and I do want to talk about this always a little bit. There's authentication, authorization, encryption, and auditing. So all these four areas are something that we look at, and all of them are taken care of. So whether it is authentication, whether it is authorization, how do you give security to a particular layer, you make something more secure. You do some data masking, there is some specific information that is accessible to only specific people. All that thing is taken care of. Right, encryption, again, there are multiple ways of encryption. There is SSL, TLS, public private key, and there's multiple key management algorithms now, and there are tools that are there from outside. Everything is integrated, and obviously, once there is a hacking that does take place, how do you block, how do you audit, how do you do these all these certifications that are there, and then how do you find out, okay, exactly what, if you want to do forensic analysis on your database, how do you do that? That's all possible. Just a look at our security architecture. This is how we look at security. How do you do authentication? How does the firewall come in? How do you assess? There's enterprise audit, there's keywords, there is just a picture to give you an idea of what all we are looking at, right? And this is, again, how do you access it, how do you prevent it, how do you detect it, and how do you recover if you do have a problem, right? And there is a huge amount of tooling out there, right? If you're exporting data, how do you mask data, right? There is TDE, there is authentication, encryption, firewall audit. Some of these are paid features. So I mean, since this is an open source conference, I will not go into details, but if you want to know, there are a lot of talks that have happened on it, and you can just come and talk to us, and we will help. um, and then when we talked about backing people, right? So there is a technical support, there is a consultative support and certifications. We have a huge amount of I think our customer support is rated at some 99% or something. So people really like us, because when they go in for support, they are able to get the support that they're asking for. And this is just something that if you don't want to pay for it, you're an open source person. There are a huge number of forums, a number of people that know MySQL and talk about MySQL. The blogs that are written by the team and by outsiders are huge. There are a lot of companies providing support on MySQL. Some is competition, some is friends of ours. So we are a big family, and that family is taking care of everybody. So you will get the backing not only from Oracle and MySQL, and you will get a backing from the consultants that we have, and and the family that we have. And I'm sure some of the people that are listening to this talk, they are a part of our community. They will help the next person who comes in. And I think one of the kind of mind-changing paradigms that have happened now is basically everything on the cloud. And this goes into keeping it simple and backing people, because if you are a database service, which is, we call it MySQL database service or MDS, right? We are doing everything that can be done for the customer, and they really don't have to do anything. And before I go into MySQL database service, let me talk about Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is OCI, right? OCI is, this is an Oracle cloud. We compete with AWS. We compare, we compete with Google. We compete with Microsoft. So there are certain things that you need to know about my MDS, and before you trust MDS, you have to, because MDS runs on Oracle Cloud, you have to trust Oracle Cloud Service. So if you look at this picture, we do have interconnects with Microsoft. So if you are working with the Microsoft cloud and you need an interconnect, and so there's a data center that's there, and you want to have a fast interconnect, it's possible at multiple places. We are the most extensive cloud. There's 29 regions, and every day there are new regions that are coming up. In fact, we are investing more and more in the cloud regions across the world, and you can see whether it is US, South America, even Australia, we have Asia, China. India has two regions right now. So we have Mumbai and Hyderabad live. So if somebody has a requirement that, what happens if I want to have disaster recovery, I need to have two regions. What if there is some data localization I want to do, that I want to have keep, for example, secure data inside India, you can do it. And you have multiple regions for it. So you can keep your data in Mumbai and you can back up in Hyderabad. Things like that are quite easily possible. And it is the cheapest cloud out there. So when we compare with AWS or Azure or Google, we are really quite cheap. And if there are people who are taking these kind of decisions, my request always try it out. There are some credits that you get, I think $300, $500, and there are free regions, basically tiers of cloud that you can use for some time. And whether it is the virtual machine, whether it is bare metal, whether it is Kubernetes, whether it is block storage, and I think one of the things that you need to focus on here is the last two lines. Is let us suppose everybody wants you to bring the data inside, and that is cheap. But the moment you transfer data outside, it becomes very, very expensive. And there are some very interesting articles on it. And we are, the cheapest cloud, and we are 12 times cheaper when there is, data that you want to transfer out. So we understand that, there are people who are going to want to have data on their own, public networks that they or private networks they want to keep it in. So we are cool with it. You can transfer it out, and you can transfer it out in any way that you want. Okay, now let's talk about MySQL database service. And why is it that I say that this is the, I put it in everything on when we are really looking at the customer. So whether it is high availability, backup, security, provisioning, patching and upgrade, installation, everything that, you probably would need to do on premise is taken care of by the main MySQL database service. You don't need to patch, you don't need to upgrade, you don't need to backup. Everything is done automatically for you. And if your hardware needs, if our hardware needs to get retired, if the operating system needs to be patched, if there's a new security patch, that is our new vulnerability has been discovered, we will take care of it directly. We will upgrade you. And many a time, what happens is that a company acquires one version of MySQL, and then slowly the versions of MySQL change, and the company, because they say, okay, everything is going fine, why should I upgrade my version? They are left behind, right? And when then they plan for going from, say, 5.5 to 8.0, there are so many changes, so many incompatible stuff that needs to be done that they are scared of changing. So you, in the paradigm of the cloud, you are never left behind. It just, we seamlessly migrate you 3 months on 3 months basis, and you just kind of, we take care of you. And always remember, when you are on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI, the latest tools are available to you, whether it is Java SDK, Python. So you can write your programs, you can modify your programs on all these different SDKs, right? Whether it is Chef, Puppet, Kubernetes, Docker, everything is available to you on the cloud. And we are, obviously, as MySQL, we know that we have a diverse, development environment, and people really want to, take care of their software using all these toolkits, and all the toolkits are available to you, and all these, DevOps, implementations and platforms are available to you. So earlier, MySQL used to be, a core database. We just talk about transaction processing, and if somebody wanted to do analytics, then what they needed to do was they needed to take the data out. They would need to do ETL, clean it up, because there were some, things that some databases will not support, or some of your OLAP applications will not support. You will take it there, and then you will, query that data, make your cubes, and then you will use that data. And we felt that right now this is big pain point for people, right? So what does a user do if they want to also use analytics, right? Now what we've created is, there is an in-memory database on the Oracle Cloud, and you can simply, it automatically takes in data, automatically gives out data. It's a single database. All the queries go to MySQL. MySQL knows, okay, does this data need to reside with us, or does it need to reside in, in HeatWave, or basically a copy of it in the memory? There's no ETL, all the cleanup, everything is done automatically. You can query it in real time. I have a nice, automation here. So basically you insert, it goes over, and it gets stored in memory wherever it is represented. And yeah, the moment it's there, automatically when you do an analytic query, it's a real time thing. The moment data goes in, it's also there in your in memory, OLAP database. And when you're querying the latest database. It's not a 1 month old data, or 2 month old data, or 3 month old data, that because you made your queue a few weeks ago or a few days ago, then the data that you're getting is stale. There's no staleness here. The moment you put in a new query, the moment the data goes into MySQL, automatically transferred to HeatWave. And remember, as I said, everything is secure. All these channels that we are talking about, all these channels are secure channels, right? And you're going to ask, okay, how many nodes are we talking about? We are talking about 64 nodes. What is the amount of data we are talking about? We are talking about 32 terabytes of data. That's what we support, right? And this is just, currently we're looking at 32 terabytes. But if your database grows, if you have special requirements, let us know. We will take care of you. We'll make sure that, we support you. So right now, out of the box, or kind of out of the cloud, now we should say, because there is no box. We take care of 32 terabytes of data that you can just put on HeatWave, and it simply works, right? And again, as I said, uh, tightly integrated, whether if you have OLTP applications, OLAP applications, everybody can just access it. And, if you have any analytics platforms that you have, whether it's Tableau or Looker or Qlik, everything, you can basically both these on both the sides, you can just go to MySQL, and the service is going to give you that data, and you just connect to a single service, and it's seamless. There is no multiple people to point to, that your OLAP guy is saying, no, this is a problem with the database, and the database guy is saying, no, this is my data inside my database is fine, but when you transferred it, there's a problem. It's a single database. It looks the same, and it acts exactly the same, and you can access it from whether you want to look at it as just OLTP or OLAP. It doesn't really matter. We don't really care, right? And we have beautiful tools. You can use these tools if you have your data in Amazon or RDS or Aurora, and then you want to pull the data out. There are beautiful tools available, right, that will help pull your data out. Obviously, since AWS charges a lot of money for taking data out, you'll have to pay those charges, but that's a one-time thing, right? So you're out. So then you'll ask me, okay, Sanjay, you are talking about this pull out. Why should I pull out? Okay. So there are three reasons. One is latency, second is throughput, and third is annual cost. So we are talking about lower latency, which is 18 times lower latency, right? If we are talking Aurora, and then throughput is huge, 110 times, and it's cheaper, right? So when the moment we put this slide up, the standard question that Amazon users ask us is, oh Sanjay, but you're talking about Aurora. Who uses for OLAP Aurora? We don't use Aurora. We use Redshift Aqua. So how do you compare with Redshift Aqua? Then here is the comparison, right? We are still 6.8 times faster, and we are half the cost. Okay, and then obviously most of the time there's another question that comes in. They say, okay, but Aqua offers me multiple ways. Why are you looking at this expensive thing? What about if I take a cheaper version of Redshift Aqua? Sure, you can take a cheaper version of Aqua, but then what is going to happen is your performance is going to go down, right? So then we become 18 times faster. Yes, you can get a comparable cost, but annual cost, but we are way cheaper. I mean, way faster. So if you want to spend the same money, then why not get a better throughput? And there are. I mean, this slide set is something that I'm going to share out, and the details of these are all given, on what the tests have been done, and also these are not, there are certain tests that we've created, and they have been put on the GitHub. So you search for benchmark tests for heat wave. Download the tests, run them on your environment yourself. Okay, you don't need to trust something that I have run on my way and I'm pushing them. You go down to GitHub, you download it, and you run it on your environment. See what is the difference. Take up a whatever $300 free Oracle thing, and then try and use it. And then you have on one side you've got AWS, on the other side you've got Oracle. Run it, see what works for you, and don't believe me at all. And then use your own. Don't we are talking about TPC and TPC Edge and whatever these tests are. You run your tests. Okay, then we come down to, okay, we are the uh, you know who cares about Redshift? Redshift is old technology. We are the new technology guys. We are the Snowflake kind of guys, because that's the hot new kid in town. So what about Snowflake? So Snowflake, well, we are 1/5 the cost, and we are 7 times faster, right? So it's really even with Snowflake, it doesn't work, and you can see that our stock price is rising. I think a lot of people are realizing how good we are. So all in all, here is your OLAP um, providers out there, whether it's BigQuery or Snowflake on AWS or Azure or AWS Redshift, and we are really, really cheap, and we are really, really fast. This is just Query is going to tell you that. Now this kind of sums it up. There are certain things that if you multiply in a particular way, benchmark and TCOs, this is a crazy number that comes out. We are 7 times faster, 6 times faster, in certain cases 1,400 times faster, as far as certain different kind of benchmarks are concerned. So it really makes sense, right? And that's not really all. There is also autopilot, and I will not go into the details of autopilot, but this is the latest thing that has come out of Oracle Labs and MySQL Labs. So what we realized was, if you are on the cloud and you understand what people are doing, there are certain times that they could be making mistakes, right? So they're doing some provisioning, and that provisioning is something that can be optimized better. So the way the nodes are set up, the way certain parameters are set up can be changed. And then you are loading a lot of data, right? So the beginning, you are starting out, you are loading the data. That data load, how many parallel connections should be done? What can be done? So that can be optimized. Whether it is failure handling, so if there is an error, that error has come. Why is the error come? Is it because of reason A, B? My some memory has expired. My certain I needed to save it on the disk, and the disk doesn't have capacity, or things like that. And even query execution, right? So your data is there, and I will talk in detail of query execution. But in general, your cloud implementation understands exactly what you're doing, and they might be able to give you advice on, okay, what is wrong? How do I do this? So you ask your cloud, okay, given my data, you have my data, what I'm going to do. How will it work best, right? And I have this set of X, and does this work the best, or do I change something, right? So it'll tell you, and then you do it, and when you do it, it really makes a difference, right? And if you want to listen to details of this, because I think the next presentation by Jyotir, she's going to talk to you about exactly how things are done happening here, right? And how do you set it up? What kind of advice comes, and how much faster it runs, and how you, and it allows you to save money, right? So because the faster you are, the less time you take, the less CPU you use, the more money you are actually saving, because you're being charged by your CPU cycles and storage cycles and time. So if this makes it faster for you, it makes it cheaper for you, right? Okay. So this is how it is. Then, just as I was saying, right? So the queries actually which are going in, autopilot understands the queries. It knows what your data is. If there are multiple joins that need to happen, it can optimize the queries by certain times. So our experts had actually, they were trying to run this TPCH and TPCDS, 24 TB performance. They were trying to run this benchmark, and then they used autopilot, and they said, okay, why don't I try to change something? and they changed it, and we got a 40% improvement because there is machine learning that is really fast, right? And there are these paradigms that are now coming in which make really sense. And Oracle has been, we know about machine learning for some time. So when we integrate it, we got a 40% saving on our benchmark. So you can imagine what you can do. And I would really, really tell you that Jyotir is going to come give you the next talk, and please make sure that you listen to that talk because she goes into the details. I'm not going to go into the details. And this is something that Jyotir is going to talk about. And don't take my word for it, right? We have customers who are talking about, these are kind of you know comments that we were not expecting. We wanted them to talk about it, but reduced our cost, improved performance of queries 85%, thousands of cores. These are people, real people who are talking about us, right? And real time insert, dream come true. There are these kind of comments that are coming which are really quite amazing, that we are hearing from them. Multiple astonishing performance improvements, right? So you hear those comments, and you feel so good that thank God, the work that we have done has made people extremely happy, right? So makes us happy. And it's not only just about you know um, our customers were talking about it. I think we are being noticed by a lot of these industry analysts, and they are looking at our OLAP because OLAP is hot in the market. Everybody wants to do OLAP. A lot of queries today, we want to have real-time OLAP, and we people need to look at it, right? And there are these analysts who looked at it, and they're looking, and this is here is what they're saying. And Oracle have shown AWS and Snowflake how to design and architect a true MySQL cloud database. So I mean, I don't want to put somebody down, but again, my request is if you want to look at the details of what analysts are, for example, saying, go to www.oracle.com, heatwave analysts, and you will look at all what the analysts are saying. Listen to them. If you're really serious about the database and you want to try this out, again, as I said, our benchmarks are available. They are available on GitHub. Download it and run the benchmarks yourself, right? Don't trust a single thing that I'm saying. Download the benchmarks, search for them on the cloud, on Google. You will say, okay, I want to have the benchmarks to run MySQL on the cloud, and basically Heatwave on the cloud. Compare it with anything that you want, because take your compatible stuff and try to run it. I think with that, we have, I think, about 10 minutes more. So I'll leave 10 minutes for questioning. Just connect with us. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on LinkedIn. Connect with us. We keep hiring. If there are smart people who want to work on hottest technologies, we are hiring. Connect with us. I think that's it.
Thank you, Sanjay. That was a wonderful session. The first question that's coming up is, why are there so many versions of MySQL? Could you take us through the major changes that have MySQL made within the journey from the first version to the latest one?
Yeah, so in fact, that slide, the reason I talk about it is because it's a very old journey that we have, right? So I talked about MySQL 4. This is, we celebrated 25 years of MySQL. So that's where, things have really, the MySQL that was there in 4.0, the MySQL that is there now, and now it's changing every 3 months, right? We have a new MySQL version, right? So we are, we are working on MySQL. Now you will get it, 20, I think you're on 28 or 27. So every 3 months, MySQL will change. Every 3 months, you'll get something new, something interesting, right? And we are looking at what customers want, right? So in MySQL 4, this is like 25 years ago. They wanted something lightweight. Okay. At that time, we didn't even have stored procedure. MySQL 5, then, stored procedures. 5.1 stabilization and replication. There was no replication. There was a single node. And 5.1, when replication did come in, it was, I think, I'll take names, doesn't matter. I think Postgres has taken such a long time. If you look at the true replication and multiple nodes, happening easily, simply, it has happened now. Within last 2-3 years, when seriously people are talking about all this, replication and taking care of it. So we are talking about that in MySQL 5. Then 5.1, 5.5 is Oracle stewardship. The security things, the JSON things I'm talking about. These are 5.7 is now, I think, 2 years old. 8.0 is like 5.6 is going. Normally we have a not support cycle, and it's end of life now. So 5.6 is no longer being supported. 5.7 will go out of scope in a year or two, and then 8.0 is going to be the one which finally remains. And you want to be on the latest thing, because remember, as I said, security is something that we will take care of as long as we are supporting it, or if somebody specifically. So if you are on a 5.6, right, and the support is finished, and then if you want a new security change, or some underlying library has security has changed, you'll have to pay us money if you want to get that patch. Whereas 5.7, 8.0, you get it by default, right? We will make sure that it comes out, because we look bad if it is not supported. So it makes sense for you to be on the latest version.
Perfect. What's the best way to include every developer and everything he contributes to a database or to a code or to a solution, right? In terms of return back, because the whole question is, many a times it happens that or creators use codes from open source and they don't even credit the developers or the communities. Forget about licensing, which may be a hardship at the moment. What's your point? What's your take on that?
Yes. So I mean, if you're a student and if you want to contribute, I think first thing that you need to do is you need to look at the code repository, download MySQL, and just be able to compile it. I think if you're able to compile, and the steps are very clear, they're straightforward given. Try to compile it. Make sure that then MySQL runs exactly the way it's supposed to run. And in the beginning, so I remember a long time ago, I think it was 2007 or 2008, we did a competition where we said, okay, why don't you give us back contributions? And I remember there was a guy who just started contributing. He started writing documentation. He said, again, this function is there in MySQL and it's not documented well. So there were 10 or 15 students. He got them to write documentation, and then they would contribute it back. They will start writing the documentation. We were happy to take that documentation. That guy works for Tesla in Australia somewhere now. Last I heard, right? So if you give back to open source is going to give back to you multifold, right? And just have a start having a look at it. Try testing things. Try understanding what is written. If it is something that, and choose what you are interested in. If it's operating system, there are operating systems out there. If there are databases, there are databases out there. If there are tools, there is tooling out there. So just look at what makes your clock tick, and just go for it. Download it, compile it, run it, and there is a huge list of things that need to get done, right? Just do that. People are happy to take contribution, and every time we release a new version of MySQL, we give the names of all the people who have contributed to it.
Wow.
Right? Yes, those names are actually given, and if you look at the code, in that code, the name of the developer is there.
Wow. 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 Perfect. Sanjay, a little off the topic, but we've been receiving this question, and we would like to hear your take on it. Do you think there would be deployment of open source in virtual currencies somewhere or the other, like cryptocurrencies? I'm sorry, like Bitcoin and other. Would there be open source? And if yes, where do you see open source being deployed? In the ecosystem of these currencies.
So if you look at a lot of the Bitcoin exchanges, they are using a lot of open source. If you look at the most secure implementations today, right, the security infrastructure, it depends on certain libraries, right? And at the core, those libraries are open source libraries. So whether it is Access, whether it is SSL, whether it is OpenSSL, that is the library I'm talking about. These are all open source. So if you are interested in security, right, if you're interested in cryptography, nearly all the code is open source. The key comes that there has to be certain control that has to be kept by if there are enhancements coming or changes coming. I think join the ecosystem, and there have been a huge amount of hacks. If you look at the choices the cryptocurrencies made in the beginning. They made some wrong choices, and they did get hacked. And remember, they will always be the target of this hacking. So will open source be used for cryptocurrencies? Absolutely. I don't think today there is any way out. The most amount of work that people are doing are on open source databases. They were on, if you look at Linux, it is an open source operating system. That's where they're working on. It's kind of de facto. Everybody works on Linux today. You don't even think about it that it's an open source, operating system that you're working on. So I think this question is, every new thing that is going to get done is going to get done on open source. If you are not investing in open source, if you go, and if you work on something proprietary, and if that company shuts down, where are you going to go? Where is the company going to go? You put all your money and all your information on a software which is a proprietary software. Nobody knows about it. There are no backup providers. So MySQL, if for some reason Oracle shuts down, right? Even now there are multiple people who know, who understand. They are forking our code, they are extending our code, they are writing, so you are still safe, because there'll be somebody who, at least if nothing else, you can extract your code and put it onto the latest newest thing that is out there. But if you're not an open source, if you're on a proprietary, can you imagine all your money is suddenly disappears because there's a proprietary company that used to run it, or there was a proprietary database on which it was running, and now the database is no longer supported. Look at so many things. Even GitHub itself, right? Before that, there was Bazaar before that, and these were different companies. They stopped getting supported. People's code was lost. People don't know about it. IBM, people have written millions of lines of code, and it's just being supported and supported and supported. But if IBM stops doing well, they're going to stop supporting the code. I'm telling you that 5.6, after a certain amount of years, we are going to stop supporting it. So open source is your best bet as far as anything is concerned, anything valuable is concerned, whether it is data, whether it is money, whether it is code, whatever.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining the Open Source India 2021 and sharing knowledge. I think sharing knowledge is one thing that's very, very closely associated to open source. I think sharing knowledge in itself is open source. Sanjay, before we let you go for the day, I would request you for your parting comments. For the last comments, final comments today.
So final comments are, I think with open source, trust and believe in open source, work with it, and no contribution is small. Even if you're just downloading things and you are compiling things, if you're writing a comment, if you're saying something is bad, everything is fine. Okay, just make sure that you're a part. And if you look at students, we have the biggest number of students in India, right? Computer science students. And if all these students start to look at at open source and contribute, imagine the amount. I mean, right now also there's a huge amount of contribution that is happening. But imagine if everybody starts doing it. If this movement grows, we are already a powerhouse as far as India is concerned in open source. Imagine what can be. And finally, okay, if you really want to listen in details of this autopilot thing, go for the next one. Jyotir is giving this talk on autopilot. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Sanjay. There you've heard it from the horse's mouth himself that if you want to be associated to open source, start contributing today for a better tomorrow, for you and for the whole community. Sanjay, thanks a lot for being here. And audience, the next session here starts in about 30 seconds. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.